Welcome to the conference. My name is Tim Harford. I write about economics for the Financial Times. It is my role and my pleasure to give the pre-introduction to the conference. That will be followed by Dr. David Halpern, who will be giving the pre-introduction to the conference, and then we'll have the actual introduction to the conference. You know how these things go. I'm very excited about the 2 days we have ahead of us. Some of the world's leading experts in evidence-based policy, in psychology, in behavioural economics. It's been particularly interesting watching our first panel exert peer pressure on each other. They've been introducing, sort of writing slides, deleting slides, wearing ties, taking ties off, all just trying to get in perfect alignment with each other. I think Bob Cialdini would be proud if he'd been here to see it. He is here to see it, but he hasn't seen the detail on the front row. He's just observing from the back. So I am now going to hand you over to Dr. David Halpern. He is the Chief Executive of the Behavioural Insights team. Please join me in welcoming David Halpern.
Hi, it's really fantastic to see so many of you here today, friends, colleagues, and so on. I'm genuinely, I feel like a kid in a candy store in terms of everyone who's here and what we're going to hear about. So just very quick comments before we hear from the Minister. I just thought I'd say something about where the idea of the BX conference came from, which was a few years ago, actually, particularly, in fact, Richard and I, we were talking about, wouldn't it be really good for those of us who, particularly from both the academic and the policy world, could occasionally get together and talk about what's the new findings, what might work, what might not, and so on. So this idea, we could just get a few people together around a table and have the odd conversation occasionally. Well, last year, some of you might know, we did this in BX 2014 in Australia. There was more than 400 people there, and it was a really fantastic event. These 2 days, we have more than 900 people, I understand, who will be coming across the event. So that's fantastic. And next year is the US. You can see Bob Cialdini actually talking about not only social norms work in general, but when you can see the trends going, actually it has an even bigger effect. So go US. We also have other things. Mori have done a fantastic survey, interestingly being released during the course of the conference on some interesting cross-national data. You can hear about that, I think, tomorrow. But let me quickly give a sense of how far we really have come. I realized it's only 6 years since, just before the 2010 election, going to see Cass in the White House and talk to him about what they've been doing. And we had the idea that maybe the same might happen in the UK. Only 6 years ago. Of course, only 5 years ago since we were sat on the Eurostar going to Paris, sitting with Steve Hilton and Roe and others saying, well, actually, what are you going to do? We've been asked to do this thing now. What might it look like? Only 4 years since, for us anyway, we had those first clutch of results coming in, and that kind of exciting, if you're an empiricist, the moment when the results come in and will it actually work? Fortunately, it did. Only 3 years now since Australia, Singapore, others sort of joined us in this enterprise. But now today, my understanding is we have more than 20 countries represented from across the world. We have international bodies and so on. So, boy, we've come a long way. The last thing, just to say quickly, partly by popular request, we actually put on your seats some of the last bundle of results from the BIT, but we also did it for a very practical reason, which has got pictures and faces of some of our team who are around. So we're delighted, obviously, to be hosting you for the next couple of days here in London. And if for somebody you want to just get, you want to catch or just advice where you're supposed to be, do catch one of those people. And of course, many of them you can see in blue T-shirts. Anyway, fantastic to be here. Fantastic to have a minister who's been absolutely instrumental, as it happens, even from before 2010, in terms of what's happened in the years since. So,
thank you, David, for that spectacularly unconventional introduction. But I won't thank you for taking away the first half of my speech about where we were 5 years ago and 6 years ago and how much progress we've made, because it is truly impressive and absolutely brilliant to see so many people here from right across the world, and crucially everybody learning from each other and using technology to be able to use behavioural insights and to improve the lives of our citizens. I mean, if we think back If we think back 10 years ago, then this conference would have been a much more modest affair. There wouldn't have been a free lunch. They, I'm glad to say, have not yet been eaten. Richard Thaler wouldn't be signing his book because he hadn't even written it. And if you think about the impact, as you described, David, on government in the UK over the last 5 years, it's amazing that the insights of behavioural economics and the Behavioural Insight project has gone from the seminar table to the cabinet table. And why am I here as a government minister at this conference? I'm here with a very simple message, which is the work that you do, whether in the academic space or in governments around the world, it matters. And it matters because it improves the lives of our citizens. That is ultimately what this is all about. And especially in tight financial times, being able to develop government projects and being able to deliver government services in a way that improves the lives of our citizens is absolutely at the core of what good government is all about. And so I see myself at one level as a customer of everything you do. I want to suck up all the ideas from this conference, I want to take them away, and I want to put them into practice. And then see if they work, and if they do, we'll expand them and put them into practice some more. But I'm also acutely aware that, in fact, I am not the customer. The customer is the citizenry of the United Kingdom, for me, and indeed of the globe. The customers are our citizens, and that is who we must be ultimately and rigorously focused on. I think the big catalyst for this change over the last few years and the development of behavioural insights, especially in government, was the financial crash. I think it had a profound impact on how we think about these questions. How did banks and policymakers and mainstream economists fail so badly? And I know that this is a question that a lot of people in this room have thought very hard about. My own conclusion was that the whole edifice of economic policy was built on an assumption of how people behave. And that assumption of how people behave became, in some sense, a description of how policymakers thought they ought to behave. And we based policy on that rather than on observations of how people actually do behave. And because it's hard to model human behavior, and because it's hard to condense all the quirks and foibles of life into a neat mathematical formulae, economists didn't do it because they couldn't theorize about it. But the truth is that life is hard, and turning theory into practice is difficult because humans, thank God, are incredibly complex and complicated and interesting organisms. If we all behaved like we ought to in an economics textbook, life would be boring indeed. So we wanted to correct that bias. We set up the Behavioural Insights team. We found a brilliant leader for it in David Halpern. And I don't think it should be controversial to say that we should base policy on how people actually behave. But sadly, sometimes it is. And we've got to instead understand the context in which people act, the norms, the behaviours, the cognitive pressures that govern decisions. And when money's tight, there is this new urgency to be sure that interventions that we make in government actually work. That is a duty on us as policymakers. So we gave this team an office in the heart of government. They padded around number 10 Downing Street for years. They reported into the Cabinet Office right at the heart of government so that we could take the conclusions seriously. But crucially, the point of the team was not to use its institutional position in the UK at the heart of government to tell other parts of government what to do. This was the nudge unit, not the shove unit. So we have to take people with us on this journey by showing them rather than telling them. And often when they're skeptical, this is the real power, by showing them how these ideas can improve the services that they deliver elsewhere in government. I think that the book of projects that have been successful so far is incredibly important. but we have to keep demonstrating that these principles work and that our methodology is true. We knew that they had to take people with them. And so that's what they began to do with the famous tax letters. They're showing people that taxpayers are more likely to respond if you simplify the message and tell them that the vast majority of people pay on time, and then trial all the variations on it. And now, across the world, these insights have been taken on. And it's terrific to see people from Australia, the government of New South Wales, from Singapore, from Guatemala, from the World Bank, who have such reach. And I'm delighted that many of the people responsible for this early work, which was so exciting at the time, are here today. And the crucial question I want to ask you is, where are you heading next? Where are these insights taking us? Where can we improve the lives of our citizens? The truth is this. In the same way that the human mind creates shortcuts and stories and cues and rules of thumb to make sense of this complex world that we live in, so too does government. Faced with a difficult problem, it's always tempting to stick with the same solution that we've been tried from time to time. And let's face it, we can't always predict what will work out best, and we need to be honest with ourselves that sometimes you need to try things that will fail. We have to try out variations and iterate and use policy by observation, not prediction, and controlled trials rather than assumption. I see it as applying the rigor of science to the art of government. And what is most important is that we have the courage to try things and to learn from failure, because only that way can we learn from successes too. And this ability to try things out and sometimes fail in the world of government and of politics sometimes takes some courage. So it's necessary to have a way of doing this to give confidence to people that you'll learn and improve and the end result will be better. So that is the task that I set you, and the job, I hope, of this conference will be to bring people together, from representatives of the White House, of the Chancellery of Germany, the European Commission, the UNDP, the OECD. I'm grateful to those who've flown in from the United States, from Colombia, from Brazil and Mexico, from Finland, Israel, Canada, Austria, Italy, and the Gulf, and more. We've got representatives from across the UK government, and we're now establishing behavioural insight teams in different government departments as well. And I'm delighted to welcome an incredible group of academics from around the world. I'd like to highlight and personally thank colleagues from Harvard University, who will be hosting next year's conference, and of course the great godfather of it all, Richard Thaler. And you've been a long-time academic advisor to the Behavioural Insights team, and we are incredibly grateful for your work and for your support of us here in the United Kingdom. When the team first started in 2010, we were seen as an early mover, and we are extremely proud of that. But I tell you this, we are also worried about falling behind, and we don't want to do that. So we're going to keep pushing forward in the United Kingdom. We're going to learn from this conference and from what everybody is doing around the world. So I thank you for your attendance. And on behalf of the UK government, I wish you every possible success and look forward to hearing the conclusions, because ultimately this is about making government work better so that citizens can lead good and fulfilling lives. And that is what this is all about. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. And you may be interested to know that Matthew Hancock is the co-author of a book called Masters of Nothing. Very interesting book about the financial crisis and about what behavioural insights can contribute to it.